Ladies and gentlemen, welcome and thank you for joining today's web conference, RIMS Generation Module. Please note at this time that all audience member lines are muted and in a listen-only mode until the Q&A portion of the call. At that time, if you'd like to ask a question over the phone, you may dial #2 to place yourselves in the question queue. If you require technical assistance, please send a private note to the host via the chat panel or call our help desk at 1-888-796-6118. With that, I'd like to turn things over to Rhonda Madrigal, Senior Client Trainer. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Tegan. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. We're here to talk about the changes coming to the new resource interconnection process and the RIMS application. Before we get started, we'll do a quick round of introductions. My name is Rhonda Madrigal, and I'm a Senior Client Trainer here at the California ISO. And then we have
Ginger Quintabawa. I'm the Manager of Customer Service.
Mike Turner, Manager of Model and Contract Implementation.
Tina Weiler, New Resource Implementation.
Marissa Archivaleta, New Resource Implementation.
Thank you. In an effort to increase transparency and provide greater service to our stakeholders, we are recording this webinar. It will be posted on our website so that you can review it in the future and for those who were not able to join today's call. For those of you that are joining us on today's call, the slides that we're going over were posted yesterday and can be found on the calendar entry for today's meeting, and they're also accessible from the Learning Center. Here's the agenda for today's call. First, we'll give you an overview of the scope of the project, and then we'll take a look at the changes coming to the RIMS application, how to start a new project, and the various screens that you will use throughout the project lifecycle. Toward the end, we'll show you some tips on how to sort and filter data, and we've allocated time for questions and answers. With that said, if you have questions as we progress through the presentation material, please raise your hand. I will check in periodically with the call moderator so that we can address your questions. Let's go ahead and get started. First, let's take a moment to go over the scope of the project and give you some background. Since 2008, the ISO's interconnection management processes have evolved to support the growing number of requests throughout the Western interconnection, as well as changing FERC regulations. At this time, the ISO uses two processes to manage incoming requests. We use the RIMS application for new interconnection requests and the application and study process. And today we are using an email-based system for requests that come in through the new resource interconnection and the market participant asset implementation processes. This is the part that is changing. This RIMS update adds the NRI process and other new functionality to the RIMS application. You'll see these new features highlighted on this image. RIMS will now track projects that will result in changes to the full network model resulting from new and existing generator resources through the NRI process, ISO-polled meter maintenance and replacement, real-time devices, and transmission topology changes as it affects the ISO-controlled grid through the MPAI process. RIMS is used to manage the processes shown in this diagram here, and today's session focuses on the new resource implementation process, which is the orange triangle there in the middle for you. The NRI process assists new or qualifying facility interconnection customers from build to bid into the ISO markets. We have a page on CAISO.com, the NRI webpage, that provides an overview of this process for you. You can see the image here, which depicts the various stages of the interconnection process. We are focusing on the portion marked with the orange caret. As we are moving the NRI processes into RIMS, we'll now go through the steps related to starting a new project, along with the different screens within RIMS. There are a number of steps to complete when starting a new resource interconnection project. The first step is to request a new project registration code. The registration is sent to you via email. Once you receive it, you can then complete and upload the project details form using that registration code. After the project details form has been uploaded and validated, you will receive your NRI project code via email. This NRI project code is used to gain access to the project within RIMS, and it will be your project identifier going forward. These are the high-level steps we're looking at on the slide here. We'll now go over each one individually over the next few slides. To request a project registration code, you'll access what we call the RIMS public site. A link to this site is shown in the title of this slide for easy access. You'll fill out the form on the home page that we see on the left portion of the screenshot here. You'll use your name, email address, and the name of your project. Note that there are some special characters that cannot be used. You'll see the request type, or you'll set the request type to NRI project details form, and then click the register button. We wanted to point out that the requested project name field is a temporary project name. It does not have to be the resource name listed on the project details form. After you register, receive a code, and upload the project details form, it will go through a validation process. You'll receive the project registration code via email. The email will also include a link to the RIMS public site, as well as a link to the page that contains the most recent version of the form. Make sure that you're using the most recent version of the project details form to ensure that your file is accepted. Older versions of the form do not contain the correct formatting required to parse the data, and they will be rejected. When you are ready to upload your project details form, follow the link to the RIMS public site and copy the registration code from the email you received into the field you see here on the slide. Then click the Submit button. Click on the Upload Project Files button to browse for the completed project details form on your computer. Select that file and upload it. A note here that if you don't see the file on the list when you return to this screen, click the refresh icon on the top menu, which I've circled there with the little orange circle. RIMS will parse the data from the form, and the file will show up on the list of uploaded files. When you see that the upload status has changed to complete, it is ready to submit. You'll click the button that says Submit Registration for Validation to initiate the process. A project code is created. This code is used in all documentation and is needed in order to obtain access to this project in RIMS. You'll receive the NRI project code via email. You'll need to forward this email to your user access administrator so that this project is linked to your organization in the Access and Identity Management tool called AIM. This step must occur before you can be given access to the project in RIMS. Speaking of user access administrators, let's spend a moment talking about the role they play in getting you access to this new RIMS project. Every organization may have one or more user access administrators who manage access to ISO systems. Access to RIMS projects is managed at the individual project level, which means that the UAA needs to know the project code for each project that you need access to in RIMS. You'll need to provide the project code email to your UAA so they can grant you access to that project in RIMS. The UAA has an additional step where they must add the new RIMS project to your organization in the Access and Identity Management tool that we call AIM. This step has to occur first before you can be assigned to that project in RIMS. After the RIMS project has been linked to your organization in AIM, the UAA provisions user access to individual users. This diagram shows you the steps to take in order to gain access to a RIMS project and reiterates some of the items we mentioned on the previous slide. Once you receive the NRI project code email that we saw on slide 17, forward this to your user access administrator. The UAA will attach the email to the UAA agreement when registering the new project code in AIM. Once the project has been linked to your organization, the UAA will grant you access to the new RIMS project using the AIM tool. Once this access has been granted, you may hear this referred to as being provisioned. You will now be able to view the new project in RIMS. Now, before we start looking at RIMS and what your projects look like after you've loaded them into the application, does anyone have questions about this first part, getting your project data into RIMS or setting up the ability to see your project in RIMS?
Again, if you'd like to ask a question, please dial #2 on your telephone keypad. I'm not showing any questions here at this time.
Okay, let's move on. Before we get into RIMS, there's a note we wanted to share with you about Internet Explorer. You may be familiar with the compatibility view setting in IE. RIMS is an application that should not be run using compatibility view because this feature is already built into the RIMS user interface. If you're accessing RIMS with the compatibility view settings turned on, you'll run into issues. For example, your file uploads will freeze and won't go through. You can check your settings by clicking on the icon in the upper right corner of the screen that looks like a gear. Select Compatibility View Settings from the menu and make sure those two boxes aren't checked. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with ISO applications and where they are located, I'm sharing a screenshot of our Market Applications page. RIMS is located in the lower right section of the screen, and a link to this page is located at the bottom of the slide. Now it's time to take a look at what we'll be focusing on today. We'll be looking at the MPAI dashboard. MPAI stands for Market Participation Asset Implementation. This dashboard is accessible from the MPAI menu. When you click on the dashboard, you'll see that there are a couple of tabs on the screen. The first tab is the All Active tab, where you will see all active projects. You can click the View button to view an individual project. I did want to mention as well, although you might see a pencil icon on this screen up there in the top left, you can't update the dates from this screen. You'll need to open the project to make any updates to those dates. So first we're going to take a look at an individual project before we discuss the other tabs on the dashboard. So when we click the View button, we get the Project View screen, and this is the top section of that screen. This screen shows all of the details for an individual project. Fields that can be edited have a box around them, and all others are read-only. For example, the resource address and phone number can be edited, but the legal address section directly below it cannot be edited. Right now we're looking at the top section of the Project View screen. Each of the following slides will go over the sections in the middle. The Project Memo section contains notes from ISO staff related to general project comments, documents that are not accepted, or documents that have been conditionally accepted. For example, if a document was conditionally accepted, you'd see an explanation about that in the comments field. The ISO uses a bucket date system that is derived from a project's estimated sync date, QF conversion date, or the pseudo or dynamic complete date. This chart lists the different phases of your project and the corresponding bucket associated with that step. As you can see, there are 6 buckets that take you from preparing to be added to the full network model all the way through commercial operation of your resource. I showed you the list of buckets as a lead-in to the bucket items section. The documents necessary to complete the phase of the project, or to complete the different phases of the project, are called bucket items. You'll need to submit bucket items based on those that are required for your project. You'll see a yes in the required field for all items that are required for this type of project. I've highlighted all of the yeses on the screenshot so that they're easier for you to see in this presentation. You won't see yellow highlights in RIMS. There is a date for each bucket, and these bucket dates will change anytime the implementation or conversion date is moved. Items can be completed early and out of order, but must be accepted or conditionally accepted by the ISO by the bucket date. We wanted to be sure that we added some emphasis to that last point. It is important to submit your documents in advance of the bucket approval dates and track the approval status in order to keep your project on schedule. These dates should be thought of as ISO acceptance dates and not the last day to submit the information, forms, or details required to move the project forward. What I mean by that is, if you submit your bucket items on the very last day, the ISO needs time to review and approve the materials. It's possible that something you submitted on the very last day was incorrect and gets rejected. If that happens, your project date may slip. If a bucket is not completed by its approval deadline, a new sync, QF conversion, or completion date needs to be submitted in order to move the approval deadline into the future. RIMS won't let you submit bucket items if the bucket date has already passed. We have the new resource implementation guide that explains each step along the way. I'm going to call this the NRI guide for the rest of the presentation. The NRI guide will be updated with this new RIMS functionality by the time the new functionality is added to production. I believe that's going to be posted later today. I'm getting head nods from the folks in the room. So yes, we'll have that posted later today. And the user guide was posted yesterday. The next section we're looking at is the bucket notes section. This section contains system-generated notes on what documents have been received, accepted, not accepted, or conditionally accepted. The most recent item appears at the top of the list. Think of this section as the activity log for your documents. RIMS creates these notes automatically. This is different from the project memo section we looked at earlier, where the comments are written by ISO staff. Tegan, let's go ahead and do a question check-in here. Does anyone have questions on what we've covered so far?
All right, if you'd like to ask a question, just dial #2 on your telephone keypad. At this time, I'm not showing any questions.
Okay, I'll move on. The sections we just looked at are all presented in blocks in the middle portion of the project view screen. The bottom of the screen is separated into a series of sections that expand or collapse when you click on the caret icon. We'll go through each of these sections now. I'm going to jump around a little so that we cover these sections more in the order of how you'd use them the very first time than in the order in which they're laid out on the screen. The section for regulatory contracts contacts is used to edit or update the contact information for your regulatory contracts. This section is first populated when the project details form is loaded into RIMS. It is important to ensure that you have set up a primary, secondary, and signatory contact for the regulatory contracts. The Documents section is where you upload your bucket items. Both read-only and write users can upload documents. The files that you upload must follow the naming convention specified in the NRI guide, as this is used to identify the files. You can see from the example in the screenshot that the files have very specific names, which allow them to be linked to a specific document type and bucket item. You will receive an error message if you upload files that do not follow the naming convention. We wanted to point out that although there is a column called SharePoint Link, when you click on the icon, it downloads the file to your system for viewing. You're not connected to the file on the ISO's server. If you make any changes to the file, it needs to be uploaded to RIMS again. Only documents that have been uploaded to RIMS can be reviewed by the ISO. Now here we're going back to the very top of the project view screen for a moment, because there are buttons there that will control some of the information you see in the bottom sections that we will go over in a moment. The buttons at the top of the project view screen vary based on the type of project and its status. Here we're looking at 4 screenshots of the buttons that show up at the very top of 4 different types of projects. The one we're going to use as an example is the dynamic button. As you can see, it starts off grayed out. When the project has reached the point where you can request to sync or enter the market, the button will turn green. In this example, you would click on the dynamic button when you are ready to move forward, and it will initiate the approval process. Note that the button does not change color after you click on it. It will stay green, and you will see a list of approvers in the Monitor Approval Process section. When you click on one of the buttons at the top of the project view screen, this is the section that is populated with a list of approvers and the status. You'll use this section to monitor the approval process. Once a project sync, request for COM, or request for COD has been approved, the phase will appear on this list. For example, a finished COM or COD notification in the bucket notes means the project phase is complete. At that time, the phase status in this section will show up on the list. I also wanted to mention that if you're not familiar with the difference between COM, which is Commercial Operations for Markets, and COD, which is the Commercial Operations Date, you can refer to the Business Practice Manual for Generator Management, which has details on both of these phases. The Meter Device IDs section shows the device IDs that are associated with this project. These IDs are entered by the ISO. The Related Transmission Projects section will be populated if there is a transmission project related to your NRI project. Your NRI project cannot go operational until the related transmission projects are complete. We've now gone over the project view screen from top to bottom. The very top line of the screen shows the buttons we were discussing a moment ago. This slide here reiterates the things that you can do from the project view screen. You can upload documents for each bucket item, edit and adjust dates, add and edit contact information, and provide additional project information updates, which I'll explain on the next slide. Project information updates would include moving a sync, QS conversion, pseudo, or dynamic date. When the appropriate steps have been completed, you'll request approval for project synchronization, commercial operations date, commercial operations for markets, or request completion of a QF conversion, pseudo or dynamic from the project view screen. Note that moving these dates will also move the associated bucket dates. We have more information in Section 3 of the NRI Guide about moving dates. We spent the last several minutes going over the project view screen, which we accessed by clicking the View button from the All Active tab. Now we are back at the MPAI dashboard, and we're looking at the Operational tab. Projects with a status of On Hold, Sync OK, COM, COD, or Complete will be under the Operational tab. We also have additional tabs for other items, such as Meter and Real-Time Device and Canceled Projects. Tegan will do another question check-in. Does anyone have any questions on what we've covered so far? Doesn't seem like there's any questions in the queue, so we'll go ahead and move forward. We've covered the screens of the MPAI dashboard and how you navigate to them. Now we want to take a moment to show you the sorting and filtering capabilities of RIMS. From the dashboard screens, you can click on the filter icon to activate filtering options. The filter icon looks like a funnel. RIMS uses inline filtering to help you search for projects. For example, if you type test in the project name field and press enter, you'll see all the projects that contain that word, whether it's at the beginning, middle, or end of the project name. There are additional columns you can add to the display. Click on the Adjust Columns icon to add or remove columns. For example, if you check the Created By column and add that to your dashboard, you'll see who created that specific entry. RIMS has many of the filtering capabilities you would see in an application like Excel. These next screenshots will cover some examples of that. You can click on the title of a column and have the data sort ascending or descending. The caret symbol will toggle between the ascending and descending sort. You can click on a column title and drag it to the left or right to change the order of the data display. You'll see a ghost image of the column floating along with your cursor movement until you place the column in the desired location. Those were just a few of the filtering and sorting capabilities we wanted to bring to your attention. Tegan, does anybody have any questions about anything we've covered so far?
I'm not showing any questions at this time. Again, if you would like to dial #2 to enter the question queue, you may do so. And I'm not showing any questions.
Okay, thank you. So now that we've looked at the application and have a feel for how the new features work, I wanted to wrap things up with a few closing thoughts. To recap some highlights for you, we're moving the request process for New Resource Implementation, or NRI, and Market Participant Asset Implementation, MPAI, into RIMS. After go live, the previous process of submitting these requests via email will no longer be supported. There are also tasks that the UAA needs to complete to be ready for go live. As part of the project implementation, our customer service team has reached out to project owners, as identified by the project details form via the NRI process, and asked them to register to be UAAs. If your organization does not yet have a UAA, you'll need to set that up. We have also reached out to existing user access administrators to validate the projects that we have linked to their organization before the go-live date to ensure that they have the ability to provision access to projects in RIMS. We expect that all project codes will be linked with your organization a week before go-live. UAAs can begin provisioning access to these projects beginning on April 23rd, and you'll receive an email confirming that for you. Between now and April 23rd, UAAs should ensure that the future RIMS users are set up in AIM and have valid certificates installed on their machine. We also have some links to more information. Here is a link to instructions on how to establish your UAA and how the UAA will grant access to RIMS. There will also be an updated NRI guide and quick start guide posted by close of business today, and the RIMS user guide was posted yesterday. If you have any questions about the NRI process, you can send an email to nri@kaiser.com, and someone from the Resource Management Group will reply. Here is your final opportunity to ask a question about the material we've covered today. Are there any questions?
Once again, if you have any questions, dial #2 on your telephone keypad. Again, that's #2 to enter the question queue. And I'm not showing any questions.
Okay. Thank you for joining us on today's call. A recording of this session will be posted in the next few days. And have a nice rest of your day.
Thank you to our speaker, and thank you all the audience for joining us today. This call has concluded, and you may now disconnect.